Blood Surge is back. Bosses melting in seconds. Vault end rooms getting overpowered left, right, and center. And yes, Uber Lilith, Duriel, you name him, they will fall in front of your wrath. Yes, they did nerf overpower because barbarians were overpowered. But with a new item combination, and here we're especially talking about the Blood Moon Breaches, we managed to crank up the damage of Blood Surge to levels as before. There will be two versions of the build. One for dungeon zooming and the other one for boss fighting. And it's just the difference between a basic skill and an advanced skill. Now the gameplay loop couldn't be more fun because it's mainly just Blood Surge. First and foremost, activate Bone Storm so you're able to zoom and create consistent barriers around you together with the Litless Wall. For the Litless Wall, we also do have an alternative for you in the gear section. Then Blood Surge, create corpses for corpse tendrils to pull everything together. Corpse explosions are happening automatically with your Ring of Sacrilegious Souls, and then you keep blood surging things harder for these millions of damage. One key point here is don't forget to Decrepify, because Decrepify provides you not only with a huge damage reduction of 20% on your opponents, no, in this case, because of the Blood Moon Breaches, you're also getting even more damage reduction, but you're getting a huge damage multiplier because it provides you with bonus ranks to your curse damage. And before you ask, yes, the essence problematic out of the window, especially when dungeon zooming, you'll never run out of it. And for the bosses, here's a little trick. Let's just quickly walk to Uberlus so I can show you. For bosses, we're having worst case scenario if your lucky hit fails. Our hemorrhage basic skill, which also has a very huge lucky hit chance. And with this, 1 or 2 hits and you'll instantly fill up 122 essence. Just to give you a feeling for the damage versus bosses, you can see like quite some millions chunking down. And the good advantage about Blood Surge is if you do one very high million hit, you'll always do another high million hit because of the Blood Surge double Nova aspect. I get the boss skill version here, but I'll also tell you what to swap if you're just dungeon pushing. We're going for Hemorrhage together with Enhanced Hemorrhage and also Initiates Hemorrhage because that provides you bonus Fortify just in case you use this against bosses to get sometimes even an instant full Fortified. More Fortify, more damage. Then Unliving Energy into Imperfectly Balanced for the huge damage multiplier and all the points to Blood Surge. And as you can see, we already have 11 points in. That is a very good. We could have 15. We could even have a 19 points in total. And that goes all the way in Paranormal Blood Surge for stacking Blood Surge into the save overpower. Now we do play the 3 points into Hooed Flesh to always have enough corpses. And yes, against bosses that works exceptionally well for our Corpse Explosion together with actually Plague Corpse Explosion. Yep, Plague Corpse Explosion stacks the damage. So 8%, 8%, 8% versus Vulnerable, Stunned, and Slowed. And that with a Ring of Sacrilegious Souls auto-triggering and also you pushing physical damage kind of leads to quite some insane damage. 3 points into Grim Harvest for the Essence Regeneration as you use up corpses, and also the Fueled by Death for the bonus damage multiplier, which works just plenty damn well. 3 points into Death Embrace for the damage reduction and more damage. And then also here we have 5 ranks in Amplify Damage because of our gear, but that's 20% multiplicative damage. Plus our Decrepify actually getting some ranks. And the interesting part about Decrepify getting ranks is more damage reduction. Yeah, usually it's 20%, now it's 22%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but if you multiply your damage reduction with your bot later on, that leads to values of you don't die. Now you have two choices. You can either play Abhorrent Decrepify, boom, for the cooldown reduction. You could also play Instant Kill Horrid Decrepify. That kind of comes down to you actually using a certain unique in the gear section. I'll reiterate that there. Now we're running Gruesome Mending for the bonus healing. Bonus healing never hurts. Quilla says Blood for a bonus 18% damage multiplier and Tides of Blood for another 15%. If you do not have the unique amulet later, you want more Tides of Blood. Why? Because if you get another 3 ranks in Tides of Blood, you go from 15 to 30%. Doesn't sound like a lot, right? But Tides of Blood gets doubled while you're healthy. So right now this is 30%, and if you get another 15%, you actually go up to 60% in total. Also, we put 3 ranks in Drain Vitality, and this one is enough fortified to always have you fortified while dungeon pushing. And then with the Hemorrhage versus boss fights as well. Not a single point in Transfusion because honestly, that chance to trigger Blood Orbs does never happen with Blood Surge, and also it can only happen every 4 seconds, so it's absolute bullshit. There's also Corpse Tendrils, together with Corpse Tendrils actually making things vulnerable. We do have our bot making things vulnerable, but it doesn't hurt to have the bonus because we do really need things vulnerable with this build. Standalone and Memento Mori for the damage reduction and bonus sacrificial values for the maximum overpowered damage multiplier. We get the Bone Storm, and especially the Bone Storm for the critical strike chance, but even more important for the damage reduction. And lastly, our guaranteed overpower, which is still a bit sad because guaranteed overpower says this timer is reduced by 2 seconds each time Blood Orbs heal or overheal you for 8,000. This should be changed from Blood Orbs and to if you heal or overheal yourself. Simple. Because right now, this Rathmas Vigor only works good with Bloodlands, and it works just simply okay with Blood Surge. Just shows like the dev team needs to crank it up a little bit. What would you change now if you're dungeon pushing? Well, as you can see, we're not playing Blood Mist, but in boss fights, we don't need Blood Mist. But what we also don't need when we're dungeon pushing is Hemorrhage. So if we're going for dungeons, we take the 1 point out of Initiate's Hemorrhage, the second point we can't take out, and we're going to put 1 into Blood Mist. Very important, because it allows us to, in certain dangerous situations, just get out of that. And I would probably put 2 points out of Grim Harvest to get Enhanced Blood Mist and also Ghastly Blood Mist. Enhanced Blood Mist is just to reduce the cooldown in case, and Ghastly Blood Mist is to always have that corpse that you might need to engage with a corpse tendril. The bonus essence here is not needed because we produce essence more reliable in dungeons than we do versus bosses with our equipment. Now, before we go to gear and aspects, there's a case to be made. I want Inspiring Leader, but for this, I would need 3 more points for bonus attack speed, and I don't have these 3 more points anywhere. Technically, I could yoink out Death Embrace, which would get us 9% less damage reduction. And that's a hurdy. It only gives us 6% less damage multiplier though. So if you can really say, I don't need this damage reduction because we're having to crapify and we're using safeguard support, then the 3 points in Inspiring Leader are better because the attack speed is everything. Now to the gear, and finally, Blood Moon Breaches. Technically, it seems like an item. Your minions have a 4% chance to curse enemies that you should use with minions. This is completely useless with minions though, and the simple reason is it doesn't have max minion life on it. And you need a lot of max minion life to make minions good. What it does though, enemies affected by at least one of your curses take 70% increased overpowered damage. And that works on everyone. Yeah, that works on bosses, mobs, elites, everywhere. Just a 70% multiplier on everything you deal. You deal 5 million damage already with an overpower? Oh, 70% more. Congratulations. Also, it hires the amplified damage for more damage. It gives you damage reduction from enemies affected by curse skills, and it has maximum life. So all the things you kind of want. And now we talked about resource production in dungeon. That's the exposed flash. Yes, up to a 10% chance to generate 48 essence when hitting a vulnerable enemy. This also available from the Codex of Powers. And hitting a vulnerable enemy, well, you do always with all your skills and all the time. That's Corpse Tendrils, Corpse Explosion, Bone Storm, and Blood Surge. That, while dungeon pushing, has your essence never drop low, especially when you're doing vaults. And if you're then fighting a boss, that's where you're pulling the hemorrhage out of your booty. And the easy swap here in this case would be 1, 2, 3 points out, 2 points into Grim Harvest, and 1 point into Initiate's Hemorrhage. Bum. Then Initiate's Hemorrhage out, 2 points out of Grim Harvest, 1, 2, 3, and you're good again. It was that fast. Our second ring would be the Ring of Sacrilegious Souls. Stat-wise on the ring, we're looking for lucky hit chance. That's a must. And critical strike chance, double must. Critical strike damage, and here then physical damage or overpower damage as the last one. Both do work. Second ring is Sacrilegious Souls. For the lucky hit chance, also max essence, really good. Corpse skills and maximum life, fantastic. But we obviously want the free corpse explosion of the tendrils. The tendrils is so good because we're tendriling ourselves, and then we get a bonus tendril. And you could say this is a convenience aspect, but you're actually wrong. Because while you're blood surging, But while you're blood surging, every 1 second, or 1.2 second, you get a free corpse explosion. That free corpse explosion can trigger the lucky hit, and that lucky hit refills your essence so you can just keep blood surging. So while you're essentially doing your main damage, you're automatically getting bonus damage that will then lead to you being able to do even more damage with your actual skill and not focus on restoring essence. That's why it's more than just simple convenience aspect. I said Litless Wall, right? You can also take a focus, and put Osseous Gale on it. Osseous Gale prolongs the duration of Bone Storm by consuming corpses. That is the poor man's Litless Wall. The Litless Wall, though, is amazing because it gives us attack speed. We want that. Maximum life and essence. And it also has a lucky hit to restore essence. Kind of nice. but it makes bonus bone storms. And the important part is that these bone storms, as long as any bone storm is active around me or on the map, I get the damage reduction, I get the critical strike chance, and these bone storms can lucky hit to then produce more essence. And bone storm itself has a very high lucky hit chance of 61% with the equipment I'm currently wearing. And that's insane. Before our wand, and here I'm saying wand because we want, sorry, I'm old, I make dad jokes, 15% lucky hit chance, intrinsic value, very important. Also intelligence, overpower damage, vulnerable, core skill damage, all fit fantastic. Core skill damage could in this case be critical strike damage. We're also getting 20% bonus critical strike chance and a 40% multiplier. Yes, overpower can critical strike. I know it's an old belief, and can critical strike. And that goes hand in hand with our amulet, the Banished Lord's Talisman. After you spend 300 of your primary resource, your next core skill is guaranteed to overpower. That's why you want the resource generation, so we can spend more resource. And your critical strikes that overpower deal 120% increased damage, which leads to, boy, absolutely amazing values. And as I said, if you do one overpower, you most likely do another high overpower because of the Blood Surge Nova. The following Nova does 50% less damage. Well, but if I do an 8, 10, or 12 million overpower, then there's automatically a 6 million, a 4.5 million, and a 4 million overpower happening as well. Gloves need to have lucky hit chance. Ranks and Blood Surge, they need to have attack speed, and then either overpower damage or alternatively critical strike chance to guarantee for critical strikes. On the amulet, there's one great thing. It's called resource generation that you want on high roll, which is currently 20%. Then if exposed flash triggers for 50 resource, that 50 resource is x 20%, and that goes for any resource regain you're having. On our chest, we're currently running Juggernaut, and Juggernaut just allows us to bibbity bobbity boom have the armor cap. The armor cap for tier 100 dungeon is 13,500. Now my chest is shit here. Yep, it has total armor percentage, great, and then physical damage. These are the only two good things it has. I need damage reduction, or damage reduction in max life. I mean, currently I only have 22,547 life. And with the next 1,300 life on the chest, we'd go up almost to 25,000 life. But hey, we have 17,500 armor. So we don't even need the total armor percentage on the armor roll anymore because we just have so much armor. You can actually say no to total armor percentage here, double damage reduction value to make you even more sturdy. The helmet is running our Bone Storm. And here, before you start yelling now, no, I couldn't use the Harlequin Crest. Sorry. The problem with Harlequin Crest is we would be missing out on the barrier. Each time that Bone Storm damages an enemy, you get a big barrier. And that one says base life here. It's wrong. It actually goes with max life. It goes up with up to 22,000. Yep. So we're getting like a huge amount of barium. And the helmet itself can also have cooldown reduction, total armor, maximum life, intelligence, all stats. It actually has a lot of options happening. It can also have lucky hit chance while barium, which then gives us even more lucky hit chance. And the more lucky hit chance we have, the more essence we regain and the better it is for us, right? Now, if you would choose the Harlequin Crest here, then this barrier aspect has to go on our armor. That means we're not having Juggernaut. That means we're having 5,000 armor less. That is also being less multiplied. So instead of 17,500, we would lose the 5,000 armor and the percentages that get multiplied by that 5,000 armor, which brings us down to 10,000 armor. But here you would have to take off the 25,000 from the total armor percentage here as well. So it would end up like with 8,000 armor, 9,000 maximum. With a Paragon board and an armor potion that could be fixed. So Harlequin Crest is an option. Now I see a lot of questions where to find the uniques. Litless Wall is from Lord Zier. That's Legion events and world bosses, but I found it actually in a Nightmare Vault. The Banished Lord's Talisman I got from a world boss, but it is from Uberduriel, and that is Helltides for Steel and Varshan for X, and that's Whispers as well. And this Ring of Sacrilegious Souls is from Varshan. So you have to do Varshan anyways under the Tree of Whispers to get to the Banished Lords, to then also get the Ring of Sacrilegious Souls. The same goes for the Blood Moon Breaches, which is also from Duriel. So you have two items why you want to Duriel. The thing here is that I also get this from a Nightmare Vault. So generally speaking, just spam Nightmare Vaults, I'd say, because you get everything there. Sacrifices. Skeleton Mages go out for Overpower. And this Overpower is only 25%, but it gets multiplied by your skills, and that would be another 60% on top. And it still sounds so few, but without it, we're currently at 2,100 Overpower. And if I do sacrifice this, you're suddenly at 3,100 100 overpower. So it's 1000 overpower plus. Yep. Golem gets sacrificed for bonus critical strike damage. And here we see the same happening. We're either at 500%, or if we get the golem up, you're banging this into the 700% values. Technically, there's also the aspect that hires your sacrifices, your sacrifice values. The problem is that's an offensive aspect. And as you can see here, well, offensive aspects are not happening. When we could sacrifice the Litless Wall, which is not needed versus bosses, and you could technically put on a focus with bonus sacrifice values to then have even harder hitting overpowers. Not a bad idea. Lastly, our skeletal warriors are being sacrificed for more resistances, and that is simply so I don't have to care about anything. I mean, that's easily resistanced out, and I can play skulls for more armor, and I don't have to hog resistances in the Paragon board that hard. Talking about the Paragon board, it's a banger for this one. First glyph, sacrificial. No minions, 10% damage multiplier. Fantastic. Here we're also hiring currently our damage, and we're getting a bit more willpower because we needed this. But if you're now going for, maybe we would need that armor without Juggernaut, you see what you can do, right? You could already take more armor. But I needed some willpower to boost another node. And since this is hiring everything by 150%, I can, instead of a bonus of 7 willpower, get 17 willpower straight away. First board we're going into is the Bloodbath for the 35% overpower multiplier. Even more overpower damage. That goes with the bonus critical strike damage on the Essence Glyph, and here a 22% multiplier for our overpower critical strikes, critical striking even harder. And that brings us also to the damage while fortified, damage while fortified, damage while healthy. And this is very important because the damage while bucket is a multiplier. It seems a bit weird why that, but everything that is damage while comes together in one bucket and then gets splashed multiplicative on your other damage. Works quite well. We do travel up here too for even more damage while fortified and maximum life. And you'll notice in dungeons that you'll end up always fortified. Traveling over to the Flesh Eater board, you consume 5 corpses. All your damage is 40% multiplied. More critical strikes here. And then we have the Imbiber Glyph. Imbiber is also damage while healthy. We could argue that the Imbiber Glyph is not the perfect one to fit in here, because we could also play Amplify. And Amplify gives us bonus 10% damage again to enemies affected by our curse skills, but it would also hire the magical nodes of damage to elites. Now, we wouldn't need the hiring of the resistance to all elements here. So that's why we decided that we want Imbiber for even more damage while. And hey, our potion heals harder. Back up into the Send of Death board for bonus damage reduction or more damage if there's not enough corpses. And that actually works quite a lot versus bosses where you get the 15% multiplier. Into the Domination Glyph, and we can tap 49 willpower here total. That is so good for a huge boost. Now you can see that down here is another 200 armor, 50, 300 armor, 350 armor. We could weasel out the points for more damage while fortified or more damage while fortified to give us even more armor, just in case you're going over to the Harlequin Crest or you don't have a high roll Juggernaut yet, or not the total armor percentages. Here we also get critical strike, critical strike, critical strike, critical strike. And then we're going over into the left board. That is Bone Graft. Bone Graft is only to activate the Exploit Glyph currently. You could, instead of the Exploit Glyph, this one gives us more damage multiplier versus vulnerable. Also choose to play Territorial. That hires our damage versus close, but it gives us another 10% damage reduction against close enemies. If you do feel like I need more damage reduction, easily interchangeable. That's down to your personal preference. One bummer we have right now, we can take the bonus maximum life here, and you see why I wanted willpower nodes to be able to activate this, but we're not getting to the Reinvigorate. And Reinvigorate would give us essence on kill and even more maximum essence, and that would be fantastic for dungeon zooming. Turns out it works without, but it's really a nice convenience to have. Which brings us then into the right side to the Blood Baguettes board. And here we're just taking another 90% overpower damage with another 22, 22, 22. It's just too good to say no to. And there's more overpower here, but we can simply not reach that. And we're already at 3,000 plus. At some point, we're talking about diminishing returns. Now, there's a world where we could consider ditching this complete resistance node and everything resistance-wise here, and replace this glyph, Imbiber, with the Exploit or the Territorial glyph. Because realistically, there's a lot of decks you already need to take. So we have already 19 decks taken without even trying. Then there's another dex node here and another dex node activated, right? We've just saved some points. So easily 29 decks in. And you could boost it further if you want with another dex. Now with these 6 points, we turn around and don't take dexterity notes on this space, right? Instead, we get the imbiber in and we need willpower now. Now we already get 1 willpower as we're going in, correct? And there's 2 dex. There's another willpower as we're going in. But now the resistance we talked about earlier down there, we can take here with the willpower, with the willpower, and with the willpower. So it's kind of like easily taken on the road, and we're already at 24. Now, if you want the more willpower, we get the 6 points. We can weasel out another point, and alternatively, we could weasel out another point. That is the same 34 points, just easier taken, which leaves us with 1 Paragon point left over that we can now take for even more damage here, that we could also take for another more armor, or if you want to, more damage while fortified. I'll do more vulnerable damage or damage to close enemies with a territorial glyph. Our companion does insane things for us. First, Tempest. And Tempest gets resource support because that is bonus resource. That resource, by the way, resource generation is even more. Then efficiency for bonus critical strikes. Works extremely well versus bosses. I would argue that the efficiency support is not needed in dungeons. And while you're dungeon pushing and dungeon clearing, an arcing support is better because arcing support hits more enemies at the same time. Then breaking support to always have vulnerable because we need vulnerable for the exposed flesh. Our tendrils also do vulnerable, but we always want vulnerable to everyone. And that's why I'm saying arcing support to have everyone vulnerable in dungeons. But then as we're going for bosses, efficiency support to always have crits because there's only 1 opponent to have vulnerable. Flash of Adrenaline gives us tactical support, also duration support, and safeguard for the bonus damage reduction. This will have you stay healthy and never run out of resource in any situation. Ladies and gentlemen, Overpower is still overpowered and back on the menu. As an alternative, I have a Blood Lance build for you, which will also update with the Blood Moon Breaches in the future. Enjoy.